Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Killen Reports. I am Ripudaman Malhotra, and I am the guest host of this show today. I worked at SRI International for over 36 years, where I mostly worked on energy-related issues. Energy and climate became the main focus of my work towards the end, and for which also the American Chemical Society named me a fellow. I have been on Michael Killen's shows in the past in the capacity of a guest. Today is a role reversal for me, and it's the first time, so bear with me, please. But I have asked Michael to talk about a particular painting of his, and it is prompted by the fact that very recently we lost a great statesman, Secretary George Shultz, a great Republican, a statesman, and he served with President Reagan as his Secretary of State. I have seen Dr. Schultz several times at Stanford, where we used to cross paths. I didn't know him personally, but I've had the opportunity to see him talk about energy and climate issues. And I'm also aware that a few years ago, I think it was 2016, when he wrote a plan, an energy and climate plan, to present to the next president. And I have asked Michael to come on this show today to talk about how he painted. Michael, as you all know, is one who paints ideas, and he painted George Shultz's plan and depicted that in a large painting. So Michael, welcome to your own show.
Thank you very much, and it's so good to see you.
Likewise, it's good to see you too. Hope you're doing well.
I am. I got the idea to make the plan accidentally. I was talking with a fellow named Jim Sweeney, who is the head of the Precourt Energy Foundation at Stanford University, and also the producer of the Silicon Valley Energy Summit, an annual event. And Jim had his latest book, and it was on energy efficiency with him. And I said, Jim, why did you write a book on energy efficiency? And he said to me, Michael, Secretary George Shultz asked me to write the book. And I said, really? I know George is important. Why would he want you to write a book on energy efficiency? And he said, I am one of several persons helping George develop a plan to give to the next president that will provide advice on climate and energy. And I said, oh, really? The secretary's planning to do that? He says, oh, yes, sure. Now, I can't remember if Jim also told me the names of other people who were working on the project. Well, so I called Nobel Prize winner Bert Richter. I believe he was working on the project. Well, anyway, by the time I called Richter, I already knew two of the elements of the plan. One was energy efficiency, and the other was nuclear energy. And so that was the beginning of it, Ripu.
Oh, good. Okay. So, are you going to walk through the painting, or the painting is behind you? Is that how it is? So there were three elements in his plan. Would you like to talk about those three plans and how you depicted them?
So we have energy efficiency and we have nuclear energy. And then I think you are the person who said, Michael, you know what a third element is. George has been promoting, and maybe he has initiated the idea to put a carbon tax into effect. And so I then had three elements, and I think three elements is pretty good in terms of being an artist and being able to articulate key elements of his plan.
Right. So the carbon tax, there was the thing that he and other conservatives in the movement, they were the ones, this is a very conservative oriented plan. Conservative economics is what I'm talking about here, where the basic idea is we really don't want to collect tax and give to the government, because if you give to the government, that's like feeding the beast. Whereas the conservative plan is to starve the beast. So what Schultz and his co-workers they came up with the plan was, let's tax the thing on carbon, but not give the money to the federal government, but have that be returned to every individual.
Okay.
And that was one of the key elements he thought that would then finance give the money and circulate the money in the system for the energy efficiencies and Richter. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. So the books that have already you've been mentioning. One is Beyond Smoke and Mirrors by Bert Richter.
Oh yes, I have that book.
He is the one who's talking about nuclear power. And Energy Efficiency by Jim Sweeney.
Yes.
And I know that Secretary Schultz was also very interested in these things, and he compiled what he called Game Changers, a book in which he lists all the different innovations which he thought many of them could be funded or financed through this carbon tax scheme.
Good. I want to share, when I was researching the project, I found it quite surprising that Secretary George Shultz was going to promote nuclear energy. I think up to that time, I've noticed political leaders, environmentalists, they have a great fear of nuclear energy. And in talking to Richter and maybe Schultz and other people, and maybe Schultz said this, that when we realize we are up against the wall, when we realize all of our solar energy, wind, and all these other kind of solutions still has not been able to stop the growing threat of climate change, then the world, the government leaders and countries will decide they gotta put nuclear energy in as quickly as possible. I think that and what I've learned from you about the carbon tax were two of the most interesting pieces of research that I just developed. All right, back here behind me is the painting, and I know I'm partly in the way. I have an image of the climate change monster. I have in it nuclear energy. That's the two big towers coming up. And I've learned from you and maybe some other experts that the new generation includes the capability of basically never having a big explosion. That when the system, if it ever gets too hot, the pipes, let's say melt, but you would be more scientific, they melt, and all the fuel that's running comes out, and I had in my painting, it all falls into a big frying pan, and nobody even has to hit a off switch. The system shuts down by itself. I had a lot of fun painting that particular part of the painting.
I can see that's the little sketch that you have, the drawing that you have of a molten salt reactor.
Yes.
Where the fuel is is in a molten state and is circulating. But if it gets too hot, somehow it flows down into a containment. And once it is spread out, it just stops. But talk to me about this. What is this circle that you have drawn, a kind of a halo, or not quite a halo, but around the nuclear, those towers, which are actually a small part of the nuclear plant. That's only the cooling towers. But I guess that's the iconic image of a typical nuclear power plant.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
Well, I mainly have a big tank, and I have some pipes running around, and I've broken two of the pipes. And I have the chemicals, the molten salt coming out and going into a big frying pan.
Right.
Next to it, I have a generator or turbines that are used. And I didn't get into the fact that the heat is generated to boil water, and the steam from the water is what turns all the turbines, and in turning them with magnets, we get our electricity. I didn't go into.
Yeah, that's not what I was talking about. I was asking you about call it a lifesaver around those two towers. What are you talking about over there? What's the plan over there?
The lifesaver is around the two chimneys, because I have come to believe, and I guess George Shultz believes this too, the nuclear energy may be the type of solution that saves us. That's why the lifesaver is there.
I was seeing because so many of the states are actually busily closing down fully functional nuclear power plants, which I consider to be really totally stupid. It should not be done. They need the support that whatever we can to save them. I think this was a little tax fund relief, or give them the renewable energy credits so they can remain afloat.
I agree. But I'd like to share what happened with the painting and the secretary's plan.
Yeah.
First, at some point, I brought to him a large-scale photo of the painting.
Good.
And he seemed to be surprised at it. He had me explain every element in it.
Yeah.
And then he started to mumble. And I said, Secretary, I can't hear you. And then he raised his voice, and this touched me a lot. And he said, brilliant, Michael, brilliant. And I said, thank you very much. And he said, but the problem is, we were going to use this to help the new president develop a good national climate energy plan. But the new president is Trump. And I said, yes, yes. And he said to me, that man does not have an appreciation for what's coming, the threat of climate change. And so that, in effect, was, I'm pleased he liked the painting. And I'm not sure if before I showed him the painting or right after it, Stanford displayed the painting. And I remember an undersecretary of the Department of Energy, Lynn Orr, was kind to do an interview in front of the painting. So that's it. And
what's the plan now?
My plan in terms of, with respect to the painting, if the Hoover Institution, where George, the secretary, worked, when they have their honorings, their event to honor him, if they want to borrow the painting, I will lend it to him. But then my plan now, in terms of painting, a week from now, I will release a painting called the Loss of the Arctic Ice Impact on the United States. And as soon as I do that next week, I will immediately start painting part of Biden's climate energy plan. And that's about all I'm up to these days.
I was just wondering if there's plan for George Shultz's energy plan to be resurrected now that we have a new president who believes in science.
Well, I want to say, if you are ambitious and want to write, get hold of the secretary's plan, and you want to take some stuff and put it together, I would be honored to continue to work or to start work on Biden's plan, and then to include elements that you suggest I put in it.
Okay, well, that's a tall order. We'll certainly continue to work on it. I do, as you are familiar with, I do write up these things on my blog, and I welcome our listeners and viewers to visit. It's my book, A Cubic Mile of Oil, and a blog by the same name on energy topics. And there are things over there about the energy plans for Secretary Kerry, the new energy czar, and the president. Let's see what happens. Michael, thank you so much for sharing with us your insights and your things as to how you think about the paintings and how you paint.
Yeah. I feel honored that you took your time and interviewed me. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.